Welcome to Real Reflections. I'm your host, Robin. One of my favorite things about rewatching a movie decades later is that I see it differently. As time has passed, the movie hasn't changed, but I sure have. The characters say the same lines, the camera lingers on the same moments, and the ending is always exactly as I remembered it. And yet, I walk away feeling like I'm leaving after having seen an entirely different movie. Maybe that's because movies don't just tell us stories. Maybe they wait for us to become the person who can finally hear and see what they've been trying to say to us all along. This happened to me when I recently rewatched To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. And I have a confession. This time around, I realized that for nearly 30 years, I completely misunderstood that the title is not a title. It's an inscription on a photograph signed by the fabulous Julie Newmar herself. I honestly thought To Wong Foo was a phrase, maybe even a verb. My brain had filed it somewhere between the 80s classic new wave song, Everybody Wang Chung Tonight, and I understand that that's problematic, and all those other movie titles I never really thought to question. Now that I realize this, I've gone from wondering what is it to Wong Fu to who is Wong Fu. And surprisingly, the movie never tells us. We never meet Wong Fu. We never learn why Julie Newmar is thanking them. And that made me wonder if maybe the movie isn't interested in answering that question. Maybe it's asking us something else. On the surface, To Wong Foo feels very familiar. It starts as the classic road trip comedy. Three drag queens pile into an old yellow Cadillac and road trip it from New York City to Hollywood. Along the way, surprise, surprise, the old caddy breaks down and they are stranded in the tiny town of Snydersville. Chaos, comedy, and heartfelt moments naturally follow. Think the movie The Out of Towners, Jack Lemmon's version, please. Think Little Miss Sunshine or even Crossroads, the one with Britney Spears, not Ralph Macchio. Although the one with Ralph Macchio is really, really good. But then something unusually brilliant happens with this movie. It transitions from the road trip comedy to one of my favorite genres of all time, The Stranger Comes to Town. Think Lilies of the Field, one of my all-time favorites with the fabulous Sidney Poitier. He also does another one, In the Heat of the Night. Think Doc Hollywood. Think High Plains Drifter, another favorite of mine. Think Picnic or even Blazing Saddles. In this movie, this is where the physical journey magically transforms into an emotional one. But what's surprising is that unlike most strangers come to town movies where the town is magically transformed, but the visitor isn't, in To Wong Foo, that's not what happens. Yes, the town does change, but I think the most important changes happen to our three travelers, Vida, Noxima, and Chi Chi. And then what happens to the people around them when they do change? To Wong Foo may very well have been trying to answer this question from the very first moment the movie starts. RuPaul descends from the heavens in a Confederate flag pageant gown. Can we talk about foreshadowing? RuPaul, who's known for one of the most famous pop culture sayings. Do you know what that is? We're all born naked and the rest is drag. I'd always thought that RuPaul was talking about the wigs, the makeup, the dresses, the sequences, the eleganza. Now I'm not so sure, because I think whether we realize it or not, we're all in drag. The successful professional, the perfect parent, the person who never needs any help, the person who solves everyone else's problems, the person who's always chosen. For me, this is when I realized this movie is about so much more than three drag queens. It's really about all of us. And the question isn't whether we are all in drag. The question is, if we are all in drag, what are we hiding? And more importantly, what happens in our lives when we stop? To Wong Fu answers this question. through the 4 steps to becoming a drag queen that Noxima Jackson completely invents to convince Chichi Rodriguez that she and Vita Boheme know exactly what they're talking about. Step number 1, let good thoughts be your sword and shield. Noxima Jackson, or as I like to call her, Auntie Noxie. She's sassy, she's sharp, she's quick, she's definitely legendary. She walks into every room expecting a fight. After all, isn't that what a sword and a shield is for? When I first saw this movie, I thought she was confident. Rewatching the movie now, I realized that it's not confidence, it's armor. Noxie wasn't always looking for a fight, but she was prepared if one came up. Because somewhere along the way, her life showed her one was always coming. And that does make heartbreaking sense. She's a black drag queen moving through a world where she hasn't always felt that she belonged. She learned that people judged her before they got to know her, dismissed her before they heard her, reduced her before they saw her. So she protects herself the best way she knows how. Strike first, defend constantly, and never let anyone close enough to hurt you. I think all of us can understand her feelings. Our armor may not look like Auntie Noxie's. Maybe it's perfectionism. Maybe it's always being the funny one. Maybe it's always being productive. Maybe it's always pretending to know the answers. And maybe it's always pretending we are just fine. We wear our armor and wield our shield because it keeps us safe. The only problem with that is armor can't tell when danger has passed. I don't think it's by chance that Noxie's most important friendship in Snydersville is with Clara. Clara who hardly speaks, Clara who doesn't judge, Clara who doesn't interrupt, and Clara who surely doesn't attack. Clara simply sits beside Noxie. And in those moments, Noxie no longer needs the perfect comeback. She simply gets to be and to belong. And what emerges underneath all of that sass, glitter, and fierceness is someone surprisingly vulnerable. She tells Claire about her dreams of wanting to be like Dorothy Dandridge, not the bad parts, like Pearl Bailey or like the fabulous Lena Horne. Women who carried themselves with elegance and dignity despite living in a world determined to deny them both. These women claimed their spaces in a world that denied them belonging. That's what Noxie wants, not to be them, but to know that she belongs. And that's what Clara teaches her. She teaches her belonging is not something that someone allows you to do. It's something that you stop withholding from yourself. And when you do that, suddenly let good thoughts be your sword and shield isn't about positive thinking or pretending negative thoughts don't exist. It's really about refusing to let those thoughts write the story of your life. It's about refusing to let someone's thoughts about who you are shape who you become. Let's be honest, the world will never stop judging us, but we don't always have to agree, or we don't have to agree at all. And once we do that, we can stop spending so much of our time defending our right to belong in this world just as we are. When we learn, like Auntie Noxie, that the strongest shield isn't sarcasm and the sharpest sword isn't wit, we also learn that the best armor we can ever wear is knowing who we are before anyone claims that they have the right to tell us. Step number 2, ignore adversity. Miss Vita Boheme. Vita, whose name literally translates to a free-spirited life. Ironic, because Vita of the 3 is the least free. She's elegant, graceful, disciplined, composed, certain. She's the perfect lady. Vita lives by 1,000,001 unspoken rules, believes that there is a right way to behave, to dress, to speak, and even to love. When we first meet Vita Boheme, she's putting herself together before declaring mama's home. She is mama to everyone but herself. At the beginning of the movie, Vita is following two guides. The first is a map, the second is the mysterious photo of Julie Newmar thanking Wong Foo. And the map takes us to one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the entire movie, Vita's childhood home in Pennsylvania, and I don't know how to say it, so please forgive me, Bali Sinwid. The yellow Cadillac that Vita's driving slows down as it passes an elegant Tudor house. She doesn't stop. She doesn't get out. She simply looks. And surprisingly, her mother steps outside. And for the briefest moment, their eyes meet. And in that moment, we see hope in Vita's eyes. Hope that her mother will not only see her, but approve of her as she is and finally accept her. And then her mother turns and goes back inside. No words spoken, none are needed. The scene is heartbreaking. I think almost everyone knows what it's like to hope that someone will finally approve and accept you. It could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be a girlfriend, it could be a boyfriend. Approval and acceptance that would finally answer the question that most of us carry our whole lives. Am I good enough to be loved exactly as I am? But it's in this moment Vita's true journey begins, not to Hollywood, but to who she really is. A journey that Noxie says, which is one of my favorite lines, where approval is not required nor desired. Vita lashes out by ripping up the map, briefly showing us that she isn't always as composed as she likes to pretend. The signed photograph of Julie Newmar has also always intrigued me. I know it's vital to Vita, but only now do I understand that it is also vital to Vita's journey to approval and acceptance. The photo serves as her North Star, as Julie Newmar embodies everything Vita wants to be. And yet, somewhere deep inside her, Vita understands something that she never puts into words, that even her idol, Julie Newmar, must have sought approval and acceptance. Why else would she be thanking Wong Foo? Vita's desire explodes during an argument with Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi calls into question Vita's authority, her right to be in other people's spaces telling them exactly what they need to do, who they need to be, how they need to act. Specifically, as Chi-Chi says, because underneath the hats, the wigs, the dresses, the impeccable manners, and all of her rules, Vita is still a white man. Chi-Chi's words hit their mark. Vita's wig is ripped off, literally. But in that moment, what also comes off is Vita's drag. And as we see Mama disappear, what's left, standing before everyone, is heartbreakingly beautiful. Because it's Vita's humanity, the real her. And we see she's vulnerable and beautiful and scared and wounded and tender and, most importantly, righteously angry and surprisingly free. Vita understands in that moment she doesn't have to be perfect. All she has to do is be human. And I think that's what ignore adversity means. Not pretending that pain doesn't exist, not pretending rejection doesn't hurt. It's refusing to let adversity write the story of who we are. Just like the map, Vita lets go of the photograph. She doesn't tear it up, she passes it on. Not because Julie Newmar no longer matters to her, but because she's learned to follow her own map, her own guide, and to trust herself. She no longer needs to ask Wong Foo what should she do because Vita knows who she is and what she wants. That's why Vita's line at the end of the movie, I don't need your approval, but I will take your acceptance, is so powerful. It's her moment of freedom because Vita has learned in the tiny town of Snydersville that approval is something you seek from someone else. They choose to give it to you or not. And there's nothing we can ever do. There's no way we can ever act. There's no words we can ever say that will earn it. Acceptance, on the other hand, is not dependent on someone else. Acceptance is claiming our right to approve of ourselves whether anyone else does or not. And when we live from that space, we truly live our lives exactly as her name, freely. Step 3, abide by the rules of love, Chi Chi Rodriguez. Honestly, when I first watched this movie years ago, Chi Chi was the least appealing of all the three. I couldn't understand why she was there or what she added to the story other than chaos and noise. For years, that's all I saw. But rewatching this movie years later, and with the benefit of wisdom, I realized that I'd mistaken her behavior for her identity. And what's that saying about when you don't like somebody? I think it kind of goes like, what is it about that person that I can't stand about myself? Now I know. Chi Chi embodies every young girl who still doesn't know that being chosen doesn't make you whole. At the start of the movie, Chi Chi is selfish, immature, needy, desperate, and in constant need of validation. She's really more interested in being chosen. That's why she's in all the pageants than becoming a full person. But what if Chi Chi isn't any of those things? What if Chi Chi's drag is hiding a scared little boy in a dress? Noxie's words, not mine. What if the reason she's so boy crazy is her belief that being chosen will finally prove that she is worthy? I think that's a question all young girls, well, not just young girls, all people at some point in their lives ask themselves. Am I worthy even when no one is choosing me? That's why Bobby Ray is so important to Chi Chi. Bobby Ray isn't simply a love interest. He's the answer to a question all young women have, an answer that he or any knight in a shining pickup truck isn't meant to answer. Maybe like Chi Chi, for us, it's a boyfriend. It could be a girlfriend. Maybe like Vita, it's a parent. Maybe like Noxie, it's anyone living in our world, a teacher, a boss, a circle of friends. Maybe we've all handed someone else the responsibility of deciding our worth through choosing us. And that's an impossible burden to expect anyone in our lives to carry. As the journey unfolds, something beautiful begins to happen to Chi Chi. She begins to choose herself. She starts by first listening to Noxie's rules to becoming a drag queen. And instead of arguing with her, she accepts correction. She begins to accept guidance instead of needing to be the center of attention from both Noxie and Vita. So by the time she enters Snydersville, she is now someone who participates, contributes, and connects. She's no longer the selfish little brat that she is in the beginning of the movie. When Chi Chi meets Bobby Ray, she thinks Bobby Ray is her savior. She's still looking to be chosen, and Bobby Ray does just that. But he really doesn't, because Bobby Ray doesn't know she's a little boy in a dress. Is he really choosing her as she is? Or is he too, like all young people, choosing a fantasy that allows him to also be in drag? Once Chi Chi realizes that she doesn't want to tell Bobby Ray the truth, she lets him go. This isn't tragic, it's her turning point. I think she realizes that you can't really love someone if you can't be honest about who you are. And honesty requires choosing yourself. In that moment, Chi Chi does choose herself. And the funny thing is, once she does choose herself, that's when she finally wins the crown, Drag Queen of America. And isn't that how life works? Once we let things go, that's when they come to us. Step number 4, larger than life is just the right size. Snydersville townspeople and Vita, Noxie, and Chi Chi. This step doesn't belong to any one character. It belongs to everybody. The first 3 steps free Noxie, Vita, and Chi Chi. And the final step, because Noxie, Vita, and Chi Chi are free, ultimately frees everyone else. When Noxie, Vita, and Chi Chi arrive in Snydersville, it's a town where people are hiding. Carol Ann hides her dreams behind years of abuse. Clara hides behind being mute so she doesn't have to deal with the fact that her husband left her for another woman. Beatrice hides the fact that she's in love with Jimmy Joe, despite what society says. Bobby Ray hides his gentleness and kindness because he's a man. Virgil, the most tragic of all the characters, hides his feelings of powerlessness by exerting brute force over his wife and bullying the rest of the town. Even, even, even Sheriff Dullard hides the fact that he really finds Vita attractive. I love the ending when Sheriff Dullard, and I know his name is Dollard, but I just love saying Dullard, who's all up in arms because the townspeople are enjoying themselves, says, "The founding fathers never meant this." And the man who happens to be walking by says, "Well, I don't know a lot about the founding fathers, but the one thing I know for sure about them is that they sure had great wigs." Yes, even history can be in drag. Everyone is wearing drag. It may not be the sequins, the wigs, and the gowns, but it is the identities that they've been handed. As the movie unfolds, something truly beautiful happens. Everyone in the town begins to dance, to laugh, to decorate. They wear brighter colors. They give their strawberry social a theme, red and wild. They even stand up to Virgil. They stop seeking permission from someone else and simply start being, accepting, choosing, loving, and most importantly, living. And now step four is so much richer and fuller. Larger than life is just the right size. Being larger than life is not about being loud, dramatic, flashy, or even the biggest personality in the room. I think it means living life from the fullness of who you are rather than hiding behind who you think others say you should be. I started our journey together by saying I realized that To Wong Foo was an inscription, not a verb. But now, after spending time with you, I kind of think it can be both. Maybe To Wong Foo is to take a road trip that follows your North Star to the most important destination of all, yourself, in drag. Not the kind of drag that serves as a disguise, but the kind of drag that fully expresses who we are. Drag that's art, expression, love, and most importantly, a celebration. Drag that no longer serves to hide those parts of us we want to hide, but the drag that reveals all of the joy and love we have in our hearts. Because, baby, like RuPaul says, we're all born naked and the rest is drag. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep watching and keep looking a little deeper.